There was a time when loyalty in a marriage wasn't something you had to check on, when the vows a man made at the altar actually meant something, and the woman who stood beside him never had to wonder whether she was enough. But what happened on this episode of Family Feud shattered that illusion in the most public way imaginable. A wife discovered something on her husband's phone that no woman should ever have to see. And she didn't find it at home. She didn't find it in private. She found it backstage at Family Feud, minutes before they were about to compete together as a family. When Steve Harvey learned what was happening behind the scenes, he didn't ignore it. He didn't move on with the show. He stopped everything and delivered a response so raw, so heartfelt, and so powerful that it left the audience in stunned silence. What he said that day didn't just save a game show episode, it may have saved a marriage. If you believe that loyalty still means something, if you believe that every wife deserves a husband who chooses her every single day, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel right now. You are not going to believe what happens in this one. Rachel Foster was 38 years old. She was a kindergarten teacher in Columbus, Ohio, and she had been teaching at the same elementary school for 14 years. Every morning she walked into a classroom of 5-year-olds who couldn't tie their shoes, who cried when their parents left, who needed someone to be patient and kind and present for 6 hours straight. And Rachel was all of those things. She was the teacher that parents specifically requested. She was the one who stayed late to help a child who was struggling with letters. She was the one who bought school supplies with her own money when the budget ran out. She poured herself into those children because giving love came naturally to her. It always had. Rachel had married her husband, Kevin Foster, when she was 26. They had met through mutual friends at a 4th of July barbecue, and Kevin had been everything Rachel had been looking for. He was a high school football coach with a big laugh and an easy way with people. He told Rachel she was beautiful on their first date, and then told her again on every date after that for the next 2 years until he proposed. Their wedding was small, held at the same church where Rachel's parents had been married 30 years before. Her father walked her down the aisle, and when he placed her hand in Kevin's, he leaned in and whispered, "Take care of my girl." Kevin had looked him in the eye and said, "I will, sir, every day of my life." For the first 8 years, Kevin kept that promise. He was a good husband, not perfect but good. He coached football during the season and taught physical education the rest of the year. He came home for dinner most nights. He helped Rachel plant a garden in the backyard because she had always wanted one. He was present and reliable and steady, which was exactly what Rachel needed. They had 2 daughters, 10-year-old Madison and 7-year-old Harper, and watching Kevin with those girls was one of Rachel's greatest joys. He was the kind of father who got on the floor and played Tea Party, who carried both girls on his shoulders at the county fair, who read bedtime stories in silly voices until they fell asleep laughing. But something changed about 4 years ago. Rachel couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started, but Kevin began pulling away in small, almost unnoticeable ways. He started staying later at school for practice sessions that didn't seem to end. He became protective of his phone, tilting the screen away when texts came in, taking calls in another room. He stopped reaching for Rachel's hand when they watched television together. He stopped telling her she was beautiful. The garden in the backyard, the one they had planted together, started growing weeds because neither of them had the energy to tend to something that felt like it belonged to a different version of their marriage. Rachel noticed all of it. She noticed every missing kiss goodnight. She noticed every conversation that ended with Kevin saying he was tired. She noticed the way his eyes would drift to his phone during dinner like it was pulling him somewhere she couldn't follow. But Rachel did what she had always done. She absorbed it. She told herself that marriages go through seasons, that Kevin was stressed about work, that things would get better. She told herself these things because the alternative, that her husband was becoming a stranger while sleeping in the same bed, was too painful to face. When Rachel's sister Julie suggested they apply for Family Feud, Rachel jumped at the idea. Not because she cared about winning money, because she desperately wanted a day where her family did something together. A day where Kevin wasn't distracted. a day where they could laugh and be silly and remember what it felt like to be a team. She brought Kevin, Julie, her brother-in-law Marcus, and her best friend from college, Tanya. Kevin agreed to participate without much enthusiasm. Rachel told herself that once they got to the studio, once the lights came on and the energy kicked in, Kevin would come alive again. She told herself it would be like old times. She had no idea that the trip to Atlanta would reveal a truth she had been running from for years. The Foster family arrived at the Family Feud studio early on a Thursday morning. Rachel had made matching shirts for everyone. Light blue with Foster Family written across the front in white lettering. She had stayed up late the night before pressing the letters on with an iron, making sure each one was perfect. Kevin had forgotten to pack his and had to be reminded 3 times before they left the hotel. He wore it without comment. The energy backstage was exciting. Other families were warming up, practicing their buzzer slaps, and taking photos. Rachel was genuinely happy for the first time in weeks. She was laughing with Julie and Tanya, talking about what questions might come up, and sneaking looks at Kevin to see if he was having fun too. He was sitting in a chair near the wall, scrolling through his phone. Always scrolling through his phone. What happened next was the moment that changed everything. Rachel realized she had left her phone charger in the car and asked Kevin if she could borrow his phone to call her mother, who was watching Madison and Harper back in Ohio. Kevin hesitated, just for a second, just long enough for a cold feeling to settle in Rachel's stomach. Then he handed her the phone and said, "Yeah, sure. Just use the keypad." Rachel dialed her mother's number, had a quick conversation about the girls, and was about to hand the phone back when a notification slid down from the top of the screen. It was from an app Rachel didn't recognize, and the preview showed a message from someone named Brianna with a heart emoji and the words, "Can't wait to see you when you get back." Rachel's hand went still. Her body knew what she was looking at before her mind caught up. She tapped the notification, and the app opened to reveal a dating profile. Kevin's dating profile. His photo, his bio, his messages, dozens of them, conversations with multiple women spanning months, flirtatious messages, plans to meet up, compliments he hadn't given Rachel in years flowing freely to women whose names she had never heard. Rachel didn't scream. She didn't throw the phone. She didn't confront Kevin right there in the green room, surrounded by other families and production assistants and cameras. She simply locked the phone, set it on the chair beside Kevin, walked to the women's restroom, locked herself in a stall, and placed both hands flat against the wall to keep herself from falling. Her sister Julie found her there 3 minutes later, standing perfectly still with tears running silently down her face. "What happened?" Julie whispered. Rachel couldn't speak at first. When she finally found her voice, all she could say was, "He has a dating app. There are other women. A lot of them." Julie's reaction was immediate and fierce. She wanted to confront Kevin right then. She wanted to walk back into that green room and tell him exactly what kind of man he was. But Rachel grabbed her arm and shook her head. "Not here. Not in front of everyone. Not before the show." Julie stared at her sister in disbelief. "Rachel, you can't seriously go out there and play a game show with him right now." But Rachel wiped her tears, fixed her makeup in the mirror, and straightened her matching family shirt. "I can," she said. "I've been pretending everything is fine for 4 years. What's 1 more hour?" The Foster family was called to the stage. They were playing against the Gibson family from Atlanta, a mother and her 4 adult sons who were loud, competitive, and clearly there to win. Steve Harvey came out, greeted both families, and immediately noticed something was off with Rachel. He later said in an interview that he could see she had been crying, even through her makeup. But the show was rolling, and Rachel was smiling, so he moved forward. The first 2 rounds were brutal for Rachel. She was physically present but emotionally somewhere else entirely. Kevin, who had no idea his secret had been discovered, was actually having a good time. He was joking with Steve, high-fiving his teammates, and playing the role of the fun-loving husband perfectly. Every laugh, every casual touch he gave Rachel on stage, every time he said, "That's my wife," to the audience felt like a knife turning slowly in her chest. Julie stood behind Rachel with her jaw clenched so tight it could have cracked a walnut. Tanya kept giving Rachel small squeezes on the shoulder, the silent language of women who are holding each other up. The Foster family managed to scrape through the rounds and qualify for fast money, mostly on the strength of Julie and Marcus's answers. When Steve announced they were going to the bonus round, Kevin pumped his fist and tried to hug Rachel. She let him, but her arms hung at her sides like they belonged to someone else. Steve Harvey saw it. He saw a woman being hugged by a man she didn't want to touch, and something about it made him pause. During the break before Fast Money, a production assistant noticed that Rachel was visibly upset and quietly informed one of the producers. The producer approached Julie to ask if everything was okay. Julie, who had been holding herself together for her sister's sake, looked at the producer and said, "No, everything is not okay. But my sister wants to finish the game." The producer relayed this information up the chain, and it eventually reached Steve Harvey, who asked to speak with Rachel privately before Fast Money began. In a quiet corner off stage, Steve Harvey sat across from Rachel Foster and asked her a simple question. "Ma'am, are you all right? Because I can see that you're not, and I want you to know that we don't have to do this if you're not up for it." Rachel looked at this man she had watched on television for years, this man whose marriage advice books sat on her nightstand, and something inside her broke open. She told him everything. About the phone, about the dating app, about the messages, about the 4 years of feeling invisible, about the matching shirts she had ironed the night before for a man who was shopping for her replacement. Steve Harvey listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat quietly for a long moment. Then he said, "Rachel, do you trust me?" She nodded. "Then let me handle this. You go out there and play your game. I'll take care of the rest." A Fast Money was set up. Kevin and Rachel were both designated to play, Kevin going first and Rachel second. Kevin stepped up to the podium with the easy confidence of a man who had no idea his world was about to shift on its axis. He played well, scoring 131 points. He walked off the podium smiling, clapping his hands, clearly enjoying himself. Rachel took her position. She played with a quiet focus that impressed everyone who was watching. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She answered each question like a woman who had nothing left to lose, and she scored 87 points, bringing the total to 218 and winning the family 20 salozen. The audience erupted. Kevin ran to Rachel, picked her up and spun her around. Rachel let it happen. Her face was blank. Steve Harvey walked over to congratulate the family. He shook Kevin's hand. He hugged Julie and Tanya and Marcus. And then he did something unusual. Instead of wrapping up the segment and moving to the goodbyes, he asked both families to stay on stage. He told the audience there was something important he wanted to address. The Gibsons, sensing something serious was happening, stepped back respectfully. The audience quieted. Steve turned to Kevin. His voice was calm but heavy. "Kevin, I want to talk to you about something. And I want you to listen, because what I'm about to say might be the most important thing anyone has ever said to you." Kevin's smile faded. He looked confused. He glanced at Rachel, then at Julie, then back at Steve. "What's going on, Steve?" Steve didn't reveal what Rachel had found on the phone. He didn't expose the dating app or name the women or read the messages out loud. That wasn't his place, and it wasn't what Rachel had asked him to do. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He told the truth without telling the secret. "Kevin, I've been watching you all day. I've watched you laugh and joke and play this game like a man who has everything figured out. And from the outside, you look like you've got the perfect life. Beautiful wife. Beautiful family. A woman who made matching shirts for everyone because she wanted today to be special." Steve paused and let that sink in. "But I've also been watching your wife, and I see a woman who is carrying something heavy, something that you put on her shoulders. And I need you to hear me when I say this. Whatever you've been doing that you think she doesn't know about, she knows. Women always know. They might not say it. They might smile through it. They might iron your shirt and make your dinner and show up for you every single day even while their heart is breaking. But they know." The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the stage lights. Kevin stood frozen. The color had drained from his face. He didn't say a word, because a man who is guilty doesn't need to be told what he did. He just needs to be told that someone else sees it. Steve continued. I'm not going to stand here and tell your business to the world, Kevin. That's between you and your wife. But I am going to tell you something that I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. The woman standing next to you is not guaranteed. She is not a permanent fixture in your life that will always be there no matter what you do. She is a person who chose you. She chose you every single day for 12 years. She chose you this morning when she put on that matching shirt. She chose you when she walked out on this stage and smiled for the cameras even though she had every reason not to. The question is, are you choosing her back? Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like it. Rachel was crying, silently, with her hands clasped in front of her, tears falling onto the matching shirt she had made with such hope the night before. Julie had her arm around her sister. Tanya was wiping her own eyes. And Kevin stood there, exposed in a way that no spotlight could create, stripped bare not by accusation but by truth spoken in love. Steve walked over to Rachel and stood beside her. He put one hand gently on her shoulder and addressed Kevin directly. This woman deserves a man who is all in, not halfway, not when it's convenient, not when there's nothing better to do, all the way in, every day, with his whole heart. If you can't be that man, Kevin, then have the decency to let her go find someone who can. But if you can be that man, if the man she married is still in there somewhere, then you better start fighting for her like your life depends on it. Because it does. Kevin broke down. He covered his face with both hands and his shoulders, shook with sobs that came from somewhere deep. The kind of crying that only happens when a man realizes that the thing he was about to destroy was the most valuable thing he ever had. He stood there on that stage, surrounded by cameras and strangers and his wife's family who now understood exactly what was happening, and he wept. When he finally looked up, he looked at Rachel. Not at Steve. Not at the cameras. Not at the audience. Just at Rachel, and through his tears, he said the only thing that mattered. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry. You deserve so much better than what I've been giving you. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. Please let me try. Rachel looked at her husband for a long time. The audience held its breath. Julie tightened her grip on her sister's arm, and then Rachel said something that carried the weight of 14 years of loving kindergartners, 12 years of marriage, 4 years of loneliness, and one devastating morning in a green room. She said, I need you to delete it. Right now, in front of me. And then I need you to come home and be my husband again. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Kevin nodded. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and with trembling hands, deleted the app right there on the Family Feud stage. The audience erupted into the longest, loudest standing ovation the show had seen that season. Steve Harvey stepped back and let the moment belong to them. Kevin reached for Rachel's hand, and this time, she let him hold it. After the taping ended, Steve Harvey spent nearly 30 minutes with the Foster family in private. No cameras, no microphones, just a conversation between people who understood that what had happened on that stage was bigger than television. Steve spoke to Kevin directly about the patterns of behavior that lead men to sabotage their own marriages. He spoke from personal experience, sharing mistakes from his own past that he had spent years working to overcome. He told Kevin that deleting the app was the easiest part. The hard part was figuring out why he had downloaded it in the first place and making sure that whatever emptiness or restlessness or selfishness had driven him, there was dealt with honestly and completely. Steve also spoke to Rachel alone for several minutes. He told her that she had shown more strength in one day than most people show in a lifetime. He told her that choosing to confront the problem instead of pretending it didn't exist was the bravest thing she could do. And he told her something that she later said she carried with her every day afterward. He said, Rachel, you teach 5-year-olds how to be brave enough to walk into a classroom without their parents. Now you need to be brave enough to demand the marriage you deserve. Don't settle for less because you're afraid of being alone. You've been alone in that marriage for 4 years already. The only difference now is that you know the truth, and the truth is the only thing that gives you the power to change it. The Foster family flew back to Columbus the next day. The car ride from the airport was silent. Madison and Harper, who had stayed with their grandmother, ran to the door when they heard the car pull up. Kevin picked up both girls and held them for a long time, longer than usual, and Rachel watched him and wondered if this was the beginning of something new or just the last act of something old. Kevin started individual therapy the following week. His therapist later said, in general terms without revealing confidential details, that Kevin's behavior was rooted in a fear of aging and a deep insecurity about his own relevance. The dating app had not been about the other women. It had been about Kevin needing to feel wanted, needing external validation, because he had stopped believing that the validation from his wife and daughters was enough. It was a common pattern, the therapist noted, particularly among men in their late 30s and early 40s who feel like life is passing them by. Understanding the root cause didn't excuse the behavior, but it gave Kevin a framework for addressing it honestly. Rachel started therapy too, both individually and eventually with Kevin in couples sessions. Her therapist helped her understand that absorbing pain silently wasn't strength. It was survival, and there was a difference. Strength was what she showed on that Family Feud stage when she told Kevin to delete the app in front of her. Strength was setting a boundary and meaning it. Rachel had spent years being the person who held everything together for everyone else. Now she was learning to hold herself together first. When the episode aired 7 weeks later, the response was enormous. The clip of Steve Harvey's speech to Kevin was viewed over 95 million times in the first month. It became one of the most shared clips in Family Feud history. Relationship therapists across the country used it in sessions. Pastors referenced it in sermons. Women shared it with each other with messages that said things like, "This is what I've been trying to say for years," and "Someone finally put it into words." Rachel's quiet strength, her refusal to fall apart on camera, and her clear-eyed demand that Kevin delete the app right then and there became a symbol of what it looked like to love yourself enough to demand better. The phrase Steve used, "She chose you," became something of a cultural moment. People started using it in wedding toasts, in anniversary posts, in conversations about what commitment actually means. A calligrapher in Nashville turned it into a print that sold thousands of copies. A songwriter in Atlanta wrote a song inspired by the moment that went on to chart on streaming platforms. All of it traced back to one woman who found the worst thing imaginable on her husband's phone and chose to face it head-on instead of looking away. 6 months after the episode aired, Steve Harvey invited the Fosters back for a follow-up segment on his talk show. Rachel walked out wearing a green dress that Julie had picked out for her, and the audience stood and applauded for over a minute before she could even sit down. Steve asked her how things were going. Rachel took a breath and said, "It's been the hardest 6 months of my life. Harder than the day I found the app. Because the day I found it, all I had to do was survive. The 6 months after, I had to decide if I wanted to rebuild. And rebuilding is so much harder than surviving." Steve asked if Kevin was rebuilding with her. Rachel nodded. "He's in therapy. We're in therapy together. He shows up now. Not perfectly, not every time, but he shows up. He deleted his social media too, which I didn't ask him to do. He said he needed to stop performing for strangers and start being present for his family. Last week he came to Madison's school play and sat in the front row and recorded the whole thing on his phone. She talked about it for 3 days straight." Rachel paused, and her voice got quiet. "I don't know if we're going to make it, Steve. I really don't. But I know that we're both trying, and that's more than I could say a year ago." Kevin also appeared on the follow-up segment. He was visibly different. Quieter. More measured. Less of the easy confidence that had once been his defining feature, and more of something that looked like humility earned through painful self-examination. He told the audience that the moment Steve Harvey confronted him on that stage was the moment he realized he had been sleepwalking through his own life. He said he had convinced himself that what he was doing didn't count as cheating because he had never met any of the women in person, and it took a stranger on a game show stage to make him see how absurd and destructive that lie was. He said the image that haunted him most was not Steve's speech or the audience's reaction. It was the look on Rachel's face when she let him hug her after winning fast money, the way her arms hung at her sides, the way she endured his touch instead of welcoming it. "That's what I did to my wife," he said. "I turned her love into endurance, and I have to live with that." The $20,000 the Fosters won on Family Feud went into a savings account for Madison and Harper. Rachel said she wanted the money to represent something positive from the worst day of her marriage. She wanted the girls to someday know that even in the hardest moment their family had ever faced, their mother had stood up and competed and won. 2 years after the episode aired, Rachel sent Steve Harvey a handwritten letter. She told him that she and Kevin were still together, still in therapy, still working. She said there were good days and hard days, and that trust was coming back slowly, like a plant growing back after a fire. She said that the garden in their backyard, the one they had planted together years ago and let die, was growing again. Kevin had replanted it without being asked. She found him out there one Saturday morning on his knees in the dirt, and when she asked what he was doing, he said, "I'm proving that I can take care of the things that matter to me." Rachel told Steve that she stood in the kitchen doorway and cried, and for the first time in years, they were tears of hope instead of heartbreak. Steve Harvey read that letter on his show. He didn't share all the details, but he told his audience that the Foster family was still standing and still fighting for each other. He said it was proof that the worst moment of a marriage doesn't have to be the last moment. He said that people are capable of extraordinary change when they finally decide to stop running from themselves. And that is the lesson of Rachel and Kevin Foster's story. Loyalty is not the absence of temptation. It is the daily, deliberate decision to choose the person you promise to love, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when the world offers you 1,000 easier options. Rachel Foster didn't just catch her husband on a dating app. She caught herself in a moment of truth and decided that she was worth more than being someone's backup plan. And Kevin Foster didn't just delete an app. He deleted the version of himself that believed his family's love was something he could take for granted and still keep. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that the person sleeping next to you deserves to be chosen every single day, then subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Because somewhere right now, there is a woman ironing a matching shirt for a man who doesn't deserve it yet. And somewhere right now, there is a man who still has time to become the husband she believed he could be. The question is whether he will. The answer is up to him.